Good evening. Thank you for joining us. Nathan Hustler with the Church of the Brethren in Washington, D.C., and I'm the president of the board of the National Farm Worker Ministry. We're glad that you're joining us this evening to have a conversation that we believe will be both informative and inspirational and help us to think about how we support farm workers around the country. Specifically, I'm going to turn over to Reverend Connie Yost for updates, particularly in relation to the Midwest labor interfaith group on solidarity with the United Farm Worker Windmill Mushroom Workers, and also the regional director for the Windmill Farm Workers. We will turn to Reverend Connie now to introduce our guests and to lead us into this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Nate. Welcome. As we're waiting, we have a couple of folks from United Farm Workers coming to join us in this webinar, and a mushroom worker. So while we're waiting for them to, they were having a little trouble logging in, but hopefully they'll be with us shortly. I'll just tell you a little bit about myself. I'm the president of Farm Worker Ministry Northwest. We're a member organization of the National Farm Worker Ministry. And we started out as Oregon Farm Worker Ministry, and then 10 years ago or more, maybe expanded to also support farm workers in Washington State. So our most active campaign for the last couple years now has been with the mushroom workers, and they're located over in Sunnyside, Washington, which is little bit east and south of Yakima, you know, in central Washington. And you may know the company it was first called Ostrom, and they used to have their mushroom plant. I think it was in the western Washington. I think it was around Olympia. And then I don't know exactly when, 4 or 5 years ago, maybe, moved their plant to the Sunnyside location. And I think it was in 2021 when this all started with the workers. They fired 170 of the workers that had been working at the plant for some years. And most of them were women who were long-term employees. And they were fired, and the company then brought in H-2A workers, which really is not right, because you're not supposed to bring in H-2A workers if you have local workers. So I'm gonna, Kimberly is here with Sandra, and I'm going to introduce them and let them continue and tell you the story of the Ostrom mushroom workers. Now the company's called Windmill Farms. And Kimberly, you can give us the history of that, I'm thinking, right? Okay. Yes. So let me introduce Kimberly, and I don't know how to pronounce your last name. I'm sorry.
No, that is okay. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, so Kim is fine, and I just tell people say TZ because that's easy to remember. Okay. It is Skawich though, and so that is my married name. But I'm Kim. I have been with the UFW since June 3rd. However, I do have a doctorate in education and was in education until April, and I was a union president as a teacher, and then a vice president. So for 15 years I was involved, and then I was involved at the district level as well. So when I retired from education, I became a part of the UFW and immediately was brought into the windmill situation. Yes. And so the basic history of the windmill situation is that Ostrom owned the company, and with the workers organized and were wanting to become a union, and they sold to Windmill. And Windmill, the very first day that they had the employees under their domain, they took them out in the parking lot and they said, "You're all fired unless you sign this document saying that you're willing to be part of arbitration and not union." And so some of them did and some of them didn't. And then the union basically went to court. I'm keeping it, kind of simplifying here, but went to court with 6 of the plaintiffs, which were people who had been fired and were now being damaged, and the union. And so there were two different cases in that lawsuit. One was whether or not the UFW had any legal standing or legal feet to stand on for the situation, and the other was how to handle the employees. And so what they did was they did say that the UFW does have standing because they did interfere with the union work that was being done and the organizing, and did actually violate Washington state labor law. And then the other part, though, was that they said, the judge said that the individual plaintiffs had to go through the arbitration process. I just heard from
So Kimberly, I want to back up, because before that lawsuit, there was the first lawsuit, which I was explaining when you came on. Now that first lawsuit was, I think, 2021, when they fired the 170 workers when it was Ostrom.
Yes.
And mostly women were fired. And then they brought in the H-2A workers, who were mostly men, right?
Right.
And then the Washington State Attorney General, Bob Ferguson, got involved and filed the lawsuit.
Yes. And they were fined. They were fined significantly. Yes.
And they got a settlement of 3.4 million.
Yes.
2023. Yes.
Right.
And that was and then Ostrom sold the company to Windmill. And this other lawsuit that you're talking about is in the works as of last November.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay.
And so with that, but it was just decided in that second week of June, this decision. And so I just heard from the lawyer yesterday that the plaintiffs have decided they do not want to accept that, and they are going to appeal the requirement that they go to arbitration. And so they're going to be trying to be included in the lawsuit at the regular court level rather than arbitration. So we are continuing on with that. That will probably be another 6-month process. In the meantime, Windmill has been engaging in highly discriminatory practices. We just recently were able to find out that they have a translator who is translating between the HR director and the employees, and is translating incorrectly in favor of the supervisors who have been lying to the HR director about what's happening in the company. Yesterday was kind of a pivotal point, and you guys don't know this yet, but this morning we did a work stoppage. The employees, there were 7 people fired yesterday, and they have been doing this thing where they measure the amount of mushrooms that are piscado, that they're picked, right? And they are supposed to be doing 100 a week, right? 100 pounds a week. 100 libras a la semana o a la hora.
50 por hora.
Oh, say 50 por hora. They're supposed to be doing an average of 50 pounds an hour of picking the mushrooms, and it is impossible. And so people are not making it. And so whenever people don't make it, they get a warning. If they come late, they get a warning. And now they're starting to fire people with warnings from like May of last year. So they're like going back and looking back in records so they can fire more people. And yesterday, 7 people got fired. So I was called at about 8:30 last night and told we're going to go in at 5:30 this morning. There were about 50 people. 36 of them were employees who did a work stoppage. We had a document that they had that said, here's why we're doing this, and all we want is to talk to the HR director. And then we also have given them instructions on how to file complaints with the Washington State Labor for discrimination complaints, and how to do, I think it's called a DOSH complaint, which is for retaliation. So what we've explained to them is if they file the one complaint, then there's anything else happens, then they can do the retaliation complaint. And so this morning, the chant was basically la queja te proteja, which is the complaint protects you. And so there were about 50 people. Many were the fired ones, and about 36 that signed their name, that said it was a message to the HR saying, we are filing complaints with discipline. If this bad treatment continues, we are going to file the next complaint. So this morning, he did come. He was not happy. He walked up and said, who's in charge? And like everybody looked scared. And I looked at him and I said, I'm not in charge, but I've been asked to translate. And he did not want to talk to me. So I called, he turned around, was leaving. And I said, they have a complaint and they are going to be filing it. And this is your official warning that you have people who are filing complaints against you, and you may not retaliate. He turned around and he came back and got the papers. So he now has the names of the people who are filing complaints so that he will know who he shouldn't. And unfortunately, what that means is that anybody who wasn't on that list might now still be on the bad list. But we're hoping to get more people to fill out the complaints and let them know so that they can protect themselves during this process. It's pretty ugly. So anyway, that's kind of where we are.
So explain the work stoppage part. I didn't quite get.
So
how long did that last?
It was so what they had said in their letter was that they just wanted to talk to him and schedule a meeting with him for next week. And as soon as they did that, they would go back into work. He refused to talk to them. So what we did was, as soon as he turned around and left, I turned into them and I said, you guys, my suggestion is go ahead and go back into work. You've spoken to him. You don't need to lose any hours. You don't need to lose any pay, but go in together and make sure that you let them know we were doing a concerted action, a concerted protective action. And we have, filing complaints. And so please, there should be no repercussions. No one got fired today. So when they went back in, apparently the boss was there and he was not happy, gave them very ugly looks, but nobody got in trouble. Nothing like that happened. So I'm hopeful that he's a little bit on guard now to not just let things happen anymore. In the statement that we gave them, and I'll send you guys a copy of it, it said very clearly that the supervisors have been lying, the translator's not translating correctly, and that the HR and office staff do not allow anything to go to the HR director. We've had people who've gone in with complaints before and they refuse to accept them. So there have been lots of attempts to speak with him, but this is the first time he's ever actually seen any documents related to the complaints. So I'm hopeful that that might open his eyes a little. And so I want to introduce Sandra.
Yes, please.
Thank you. I'm going to let her introduce herself, but I will translate for her. Así es que,
okay, thank you.
Te presentes a ellos con tu nombre y cómo empezaste ahí todo.
Ok, mi nombre es Sandra Luz Chávez.
So Sandra Chavez.
Empecé en el 2020
She started in 2020.
de pescadora.
She was a pescadora, a picker of the mushrooms.
Después me subieron a supervisora.
So they took her up to a lead supervisor position, still in the employee realm, but a leader.
Después que pasó de supervisora, mi supervisora mía me presionaba para que yo maltratara a la gente.
So her supervisor began to pressure her to mistreat the people.
Yo no quise acceder a eso.
I didn't want to do that.
Yo no quise acceder a eso porque ella me exigía que yo tenía que gritarles.
She didn't want to do that because she was being told she had to yell at the employees.
Que tenía que apurarlo rápido.
That she had to hurry them along all the time.
Y si no me hacían caso, yo tenía que gritarles.
And if they didn't listen to her, she was supposed to shout at them.
And what year was this? What year was this?
En ese año, en el 2000, empezó en el 2000, primero, en febrero de este año, del 2024.
So February of this year was when she started in that role.
I see, okay.
Okay. Si yo no hacía eso,
if I didn't do this,
ella me daba warning.
She would give her warnings.
Después me decía que si no podía yo, que si no hacían caso también los podía llevar con ella para que ella les explicara y los ponía también en warning a ellos.
So the supervisor told her that if they didn't listen to her, she could bring the employees to the higher supervisor who would then, do the punishment and explain to them what was going on and give them a warning.
Yo no quise acceder a eso.
I didn't want to do that either.
Entonces ella me empezó a dar warning.
So she started giving warnings.
Si yo llegaba un minuto tarde,
if she arrived 1 minute late,
de mi horario, otro warning.
Another warning.
Hasta que me dio 3 warning.
Until they gave her 3 warnings.
Y se me puso, me gritaba ya.
And she yelled at her.
Y ya me dio el último warning.
She gave her the last warning to fire her.
Allí hay una persona que está al favor de la supervisora.
So there was a person that was on the side of the supervisor.
2 pescadores se quejaron de esa supervisora.
2 of the pescadores complained about that supervisor.
De acoso.
For harassment.
Fueron con recursos humanos.
They went to recursos, to human resources.
Ah, y como esa persona estaba en favor de la supervisora que quería que gritara,
Since this person was in favor of the supervisor that wanted them to yell,
Recursos Humanos no hizo nada
Human Resources didn't do anything
para esas personas que las estaba acosando.
to the people that were harassing.
Esa persona todavía está ahí.
That person is still there.
Ella decía, la supervisora decía que yo no hacía un buen trabajo
And the supervisor, as one of the reasons, said that she didn't do good work,
y yo sacaba más producción
but she produced
que las
more
demás,
than everybody else,
que gente que estaba con ella.
than the people that were with her.
Pero eso era excusa para sacarme.
It was an excuse to take her out. And just so you guys know, she got a copy of her record and showed it to me. And she only had pure good until this very last one. And we could see that they had changed one of the marks on it to make it a negative. So even falsifying documents later on to verify.
Entonces yo no accedí a eso, entonces fue mi despido.
So that, and since she wasn't willing to do the things they were asking her to do that she felt were wrong, they fired her.
Yo en esa empresa ya tenía 4 años.
She was there 4 years.
Se supone que si no doy producción me habían sacado el primer día.
You would think that if she wasn't doing production, that they would have taken her out at the beginning, at the first day.
Pero duré 4 años.
But I was there
And
for
when was she fired? Just recently?
yes. Well, it was while I've been here, which is just June. So
Yeah. Okay.
she got fired like the first or second week of June.
Ujú.
Mhm.
Entonces tienen ahí gente que grita,
They have people there that yell,
que abusa de los pescadores,
that abuse the workers,
que los acosa
they harass them,
y que están con ella
and they're with her,
violentándonos
being very
y
violent,
haciéndonos los bullying.
and they also make fun of them.
Es mucha presión ahí
A
y
lot of
mucho
pressure,
acoso.
lots of harassment.
Incluso para mí eso fue acoso laboral.
For her, it was a work harassment. Okay. ¿Quieres hablar de las personas que ellos dicen que van a quitar los papeles?
Sí,
Okay.
sí.
Entonces,
Ok. Otra cosa,
another thing is
dicen que todos los que no tengan seguro bueno,
there are people who don't have good social security numbers,
los van a discriminar de sacarlos
and they're going to discriminate against them to get rid of them
por no tener su seguro bueno.
because they're not going to have a good social security number.
Ajá, entonces ahorita están haciendo el despido de casi todos. Ayer les dieron warning a todos.
So they gave a warning to everyone yesterday
Porque lo que quieren es sacar a todos
because they want to get rid of everybody
y traer gente de agencia.
and bring in the H2As,
Para traer gente de agencia.
to bring in the H2As.
Si están de agencia, van a estar otra compañía los respalda y ellos quedan
Yep.
libres de
So that way, if they
responsabilidad.
bring in another company, then the other company is responsible for things and that they can wash their hands, is what she was doing.
Ujú. Entonces, hay otra cosa que también a todos los de allá, un supervisor les ayudaba a todas a llenar papeles y todo, y a mí nunca quisieron ayudarme nada.
So there is a lady in the office that would help them all to fill out paperwork and stuff, but at Sandra, they refused to help her. So there were some that were helped and others that weren't.
Entonces, para mí era otra acoso laboral.
For her, that was another
Y
like work
discriminación.
harassment and discrimination.
Hay mucha discriminación ahí.
There's lots of discrimination,
Mucho acoso laboral
lots of work harassment
y acoso verbal.
and verbal abuse.
Y es un círculo que está la cabeza del supervisor con los que están con ella.
Okay, so it's the head of the supervisor with all the people that are with her. Okay,
Y si no están con ella,
and if they're not with her,
le pasa lo que a mí me pasó, me despidieron.
then they do what they did to her, which is to fire them.
A mí cuando me despidieron, me dijeron que me tenía que llenar un papel que me estaba diciendo que yo no servía para nada,
Oh, okay.
que yo no sacaba producción, que yo no servía para supervisora porque yo no les gritaba a los pescadores.
So they wanted her to sign a document in which they had put all of the things, the reasons why they were firing her, and they wanted her to sign that. And so it was saying things like that she didn't do good production, that she wasn't yelling at the employees, that she wasn't doing all of these things.
En pocas palabras me decía que yo era una tonta,
So basically they said she was a fool,
pero yo les demostraba lo contrario,
but I
porque
demonstrated the contrary.
en los cuartos yo ponía cuántas libras salía de producción.
So in every room, she would put how many pounds there were of production.
Y yo casi siempre sacaba más que
Ah.
las con las que ella estaba.
She almost always did more than anybody else that was in the room.
Yo le dije al supervisor de ella, de
I
mi
told
supervisora,
her supervisor
que se fijaran en los récords,
that they should look at the records.
pero como también el otro está con ella,
But since he's with her,
que viene siendo una cadena,
and that's the chain,
entonces yo quedé bajo el agua.
I was underwater.
Entonces es lo que ahorita está pasando en esa compañía, que todos se lavan las manos
So that's what's happening in the company. Everybody's washing their hands,
y el que no está con ellos,
and anybody that's not with them
ok, pasa lo que a mí me pasó a mí.
is going to happen what happened to her.
Cuando me despidió, quería que yo llenara una hoja que me decía que yo no hacía buen trabajo,
Yeah,
que
they
yo
had
era-
that paper that said all these things about her not doing a good job,
y yo no se la quise llenar.
and I did not want to fill it out.
Me quiso pedir mi gafet,
Oh yeah, her badge. Mhm.
no se lo quise dar.
She didn't want to give it to them.
Entonces fue peor,
So it was worse.
porque como quien dice, me acosó laboralmente porque no me,
They basically harassed her late work wise in terms of making it about her work and harassing her about, even though she was good, they were saying she wasn't.
pero en esos días me habló muy grosera.
They were
muy
very,
grosera.
they were actually swear wordy with her, grosera. So
Estaba un cajero
there was
conmigo.
a cashier, or no, box person,
Ajá,
box person,
ajá.
sorry.
El cajero dijo que lo tengo de testigo, que cómo me habló ella de grosera.
He is her witness as to how she was speaking to him.
Yo tengo cartas
She has letters,
que me firmaron gente
people signed
que estaba conmigo, que yo hablaba con ellas,
That
que
were
no era
there.
justo
that it wasn't fair,
lo que ella nos estaba
what she
haciendo,
was doing to them.
y me firmaron cartas.
And they signed letters to that effect.
Yo fui y se las enseñé al mero mero
I went and showed them to the highest guy
y me ignoró.
and he ignored her.
Entonces es una cadena que se están tapando.
It's a chain and they are covering it.
Entonces ahí sí necesitamos mucha ayuda
We need a lot of help.
porque tenemos que quitar la discriminación,
We have to stop the discrimination
acoso laboral,
and the harassment, the work harassment,
acoso verbal
the verbal harassment,
y todo tipo de acoso.
and all types of harassment.
Entonces sí les pido por favor que sí nos ayuden mucho
So
en ese aspecto porque yo ya lo viví
she is
Sí.
asking for help because she has lived it,
y es muy feo eso,
and it's very ugly.
a pesar que yo tengo papeles, gracias a Dios,
Even though I have papers, she says, even though she has papers, thanks to God,
pero yo tengo que defender a nosotros mismos
but I have to defend us
por humanidad,
for humanity.
porque si no fuera así,
If it wasn't that way,
entonces no vamos a progresar.
we're not going to progress.
Como los que les pidieron papeles, yo digo, bueno,
Those
sí,
who have papers and those who don't have
yo
papers.
digo, pues es problema de ellos, pero no, es problema mío también,
It's also my problem, even if it's someone else who doesn't have papers, it's also my problem
porque somos mexicanos,
because
somos
we are Mexican
cualquier tipo de
or
raza,
whatever type of race.
tenemos que defendernos porque somos
We have to
humanos.
defend ourselves because we're human.
Entonces, yo ahorita yo estoy muy dolida y
I'm very
muy,
hurt,
muy resignada
resigned.
de que no, esa señora y a ellos no les está pasando nada. Ahí tienen la que
To this
acosó,
lady, that nothing's happening to her, she's harassed,
ahí tienen el acoso laboral,
and the harassment in the workplace,
la que les grita,
the one that yells,
las que les hacen bullying a los
the ones
trabajadores. Bullying.
bullying, yes, thank you.
Bullying.
Bullying,
Ajá. Ahí están adentro y a
They're
nosotros nos
inside
están
and
sacando.
we're outside.
Ahora, otra cosa, a mí me gustaría que hicieran una encuesta de cómo yo trabajé.
She would love it if they actually did a survey as to how she worked.
Yo le dije eso al mero mero,
She said that to the big boss,
que hiciera una encuesta
that they do a survey about how she did as a worker
cómo yo traté a la gente.
and how she treated people.
Yo le dije, no me crea a mí,
If you don't believe me,
haga una encuesta.
do a survey.
No pasó nada.
Nothing happened
¿Por qué? Porque ellos saben que ellos van a perder.
because they know they would be wrong. They would lose.
Porque la gente que tiene sí les gusta y eso es lo que ellos quieren.
See, the people, you yell at them, this is what they want.
Yeah. Well, it's very, I'm very sorry about your situation. I'm really sorry about everything that's been happening there. We are here to find out more about what we can do to support you. But I think first, let me open it for anybody that has questions about what's been said so far. And I don't know how that works, Rosie, for the other people, but you can tell them what to do.
Yeah, so if you guys have questions, if you go to the toolbar at the bottom of your screen, there's going to be a Q&A button, and any questions you guys have, you can type into there. And I can look, we have some questions on the Google form. Let me see if any are good, if there's a good time for any of them now.
And any of the panelists that may have questions also can just unmute yourself.
There's one question we have on the Google form that I'm going to save for the end, but oh, we have one in the toolbar. How many pickers work at this company?
In Sunnyside, that we've determined there's just around 90, between 90 and 100. So 36 going out was just over a third.
Okay. And I had a question. I know last year, or when they fired those 170 workers, they did bring in some H2A workers. But then are there any H2A workers there anymore?
Hay H2 ahorita de agencia, hay personas de agencia ahorita. Sí. Yes, there are. We don't
Do you
know
know how many they have?
Ahorita nada más son como unos, han de ser unos 15.
About 15 maybe.
15, okay.
Are they, so as they're getting rid of the current workers and looking to hire H2A workers, are they looking for them to come under like a labor contractor so that they don't have to be responsible for them?
Yes,
Okay.
that's what she was explaining. Yeah, that they
Yeah.
can wash their hands of them is what she was kind of saying.
Okay, that's what I thought she meant. Thank you.
Yeah.
I have a question. Tengo una pregunta para Sandra. Sandra, me gustaría saber si tienes tú o sabes tú si les están pagando igual a los trabajadores que vienen con visa, igual que a los que trabajan ahí de planta.
Ahorita no tienen no tienen de esos, ahorita no, ahorita nada más son que ellos son de otra agencia, los está contratando, entonces el que está de la agencia se entiende con él de acá, entonces nada más tenemos de esos, pero ahorita a mí, lo que yo he sabido, que quieren sacar a todos para meterlos de agencia, porque como si se accidentan o cualquier cosa, el Wildfire, ellos no tienen que ver nada, se va a entender el de la otra agencia. Entonces ahorita a todos, les digo precisamente ayer, les dieron warning, gente que hace mucho más de 50 libras, pero es para sacarlos y traerles los de agencia. Entonces, ahorita todos están estresados y todos están siendo que unos están sacando más de 50 libras y de todos modos ayer les dieron warning.
Okay, so I'm going to translate for those of you what was asked by Elizabeth was whether or not there were any with a visa, etc. And what Sandra said was no, it's the agency group that's happening, and that it's all about removing the current workers so that they can bring in more from the agency, and that's what they're trying to do. And so people are scared, they're very stressed. It's a very just tight workplace right now, and they're giving warnings to people who have actually done more than the actual 50 pound requirement are being given warnings even.
Yeah, so what I want to mention to the viewers or to our team here, our panelists, is that what Sandra is saying is that this company doesn't just have FLCs, they're using a staffing agency to contract these workers so that they don't have to say, or they don't have to be responsible, accountable for hiring the FLCs. Instead, they're saying, well, we're hiring a staffing agency. The staffing agency is the one that's doing this, right? So I guess to me, it looks like they're trying to promote miscommunication within their own company.
¿Qué están haciendo?
Para mí se ve como que si quieren promover a falta de comunicación.
Sí.
Gracias, Sandra. Thank you, Sandra, por tu respuesta.
Gracias a
Nos da un poquito más. Her answer really gives us a little bit more a perspective into what's happening, the dynamics that are happening there. The workers are feeling pressured. They're pressured to produce, and even though they're producing at a rapid rate, they're still being given warnings. They're still working in a volatile environment where they're being pressured to basically quit, right? So there's a lot of employee violations happening right now.
Yes.
Incluso en una ocasión
One occasion,
me hizo un plan de trabajo,
I made a work plan
supuestamente porque yo no hacía libras.
because they gave her a work plan, like a plan of assistance, because she wasn't doing enough
Libras
pounds
del cuarto.
in the room.
Entonces ahí yo le comprobé que yo hacía más libras que los demás.
I proved that I did more than everybody else.
Se enojó más
They got more mad at me,
y me hizo una carta
and they made a letter
diciéndome que yo no era buena para eso,
that she wasn't good for this,
que todo lo que yo hacía estaba muy mal.
that everything I did, everything she did was bad.
Yo no le quise firmar nada de
I
lo que
wouldn't
ella
sign
puso.
it. I didn't want to sign anything she gave me.
Después al siguiente día
And the next day,
habló con el Jet
she
que viene
talked to
siendo,
Jeff, who's the HR director,
y me citaron los dos
and they had an appointment with both of them,
y me intimidaron, me dijeron que
and they
tenía que
intimidated
firmar.
her, and she had to sign.
Tenía que firmar que porque teníamos, mientras yo esté ahí, que tengo que firmar lo que
Because
ellos,
while she was there, she had to sign
lo que ellos me digan.
whatever they said.
Entonces tuve que firmarlo, pero no por mi voluntad.
But she had to sign it, but not because she wanted to. And just so you guys know, she came, I met her after she'd been fired. So we've been teaching them that they can say, I'm signing under protest because I disagree with what it says. So that, giving them words and things that they can write down and say why, because this isn't true, because it's inaccurate or whatever. So we're teaching them how to follow the rule, but defend themselves.
Entonces, incluso una vez
One time,
me dijo que yo, de un trabajo que yo hice,
one work that she did,
en el cuarto, y dijo que la gente se había ido a quejar
she said that people had complained
con ella, que
with
porque no había muchas libras.
because there weren't a lot of pounds.
Yo hablé con la gente
I talked to the people
y dijeron que ellos nunca hicieron eso.
that they never did that.
Entonces ella, la Isabel, me hizo que me humillara ante ellos y dijera que
She
perdón.
humiliated her in front of the others.
Y aquí está una de las, y me dijo que pidiera perdón, pero que ella tenía que mirar.
So wait, ¿quién pidió perdón?
Que yo tenía que pedirles perdón a las
They wanted her to ask for forgiveness to the people,
pero que ella tenía que mirar.
but she had to see and watch her.
Entonces de eso también yo hice una carta y me firmaron todos de que era
And so she
mentira.
made a letter and everybody signed it saying that that was untrue, what she was saying.
Que era mentira de que ellos se habían ido a quejar.
That it was not true that they had gone to complain.
Y ellos me firmaron esa carta.
And they all signed a letter.
We have, before we move on, we have 2 questions in the Q&A that I think that we can merge into one. What is the working relationship like with H2A workers and prior workers? And are all workers required to be on the same wage scale as the H2As?
Quería saber 2 cosas. Una es cuál es la relación entre los de agencia y los trabajadores que no son de agencia, que estaban ahí antes, y si están todos en el mismo escala de pago.
No, los de agencia
The ones from agency,
les paga la agencia que los contrató, ellos no Windmill Farm.
so they're paid by the agency and not Windmill Farms.
Les paga la agencia de ellos.
¿Sabes si es más o menos?
El mínimo.
It is minimum, so they pay the minimum wage. The agency are paid minimum wage.
Otra, si ellos se accidentan en Windmill Farm,
If they have an accident at Windmill,
Windmill Farm no les hace nada.
Windmill doesn't do anything. They have
Tienen
to
que ir a la agencia.
to the agency for any, if they get hurt or if anything happens.
Entonces, por eso ellos quieren de agencia para ellos no tener nada que
So
ver
they
que
want the
se
agency so that they
accidentan.
don't have to have any responsibility. Pero ¿cómo se llevan con los trabajadores?
Bien.
They all get along. The
Bien.
workers all get along, the H2A and the prior employees. They all find themselves in the same boat, basically.
Ujú.
En el mismo
Bien.
barco.
Ujú, sí.
Okay, so, we're here, as, you know, part of, National Farm Worker Ministry.
Mhm.
And as you know, Kim,
Ujú.
we at Farm Worker Ministry Northwest are more local, so we can be physically present at some actions. And I'd like to just say what we've done in the past, and then maybe you can tell us what's coming up for the future.
Okay, okay.
So, yeah, as I mentioned, this started a few years ago, and so there've been a number of rallies that the UFW has orchestrated rallies over in Sunnyside, Washington, where the plant actually is, and we've been over there several times. And also in Seattle, because Seattle is, of course, the more major population center in Washington State. So UFW chose to do actions in Seattle to gather more supporters, more press. So we've been there several times. For a while, there was a campaign to go see what kind of mushrooms were in your grocery store. And I don't know where that one's at the moment, but maybe Kim can let us know. I never saw any mushrooms that said Sunnyside myself, but I think some people might have. Now this year it's been pretty active for us here locally. We had the Sunnyside rally with UFW President Teresa Romero was there. That was in Sunnyside in March. And then we had, I went over to Yakima on May 15 to attend the Yakima Association of Faith Communities. And I'm trying to gather up more local supporters over there. So that was very fruitful. And we had UFW, we had some folks there representing a woman, was it Estella? Estella, who had been a former mushroom worker, was there, and Lorena, and they talked to the folks about the struggle. And then on May 29, they had the UFW luncheon in Seattle, which was at least the second or third year maybe they've been doing that. And that was very interesting because we had, I think there were about 8 workers there who told stories, unfortunately, very similar to what Sandra's telling us. Some people were actually in tears. It was, you know, I think the pressure on the workers is a lot. And it's just sad. But what was good in that luncheon, we had some faith community there. They had a lot of union support. They also had these Washington State legislators who were there, and they vowed to introduce a bill that would give farm workers the right to organize in Washington State. So they sat there and said that they were going to, they'd already written the bill, they just hadn't introduced it, but hopefully they will next session. And so I decided Oregon needed to do that. So I emailed my friends at Piccoon, our Oregon Farm Worker Labor Union, as you know, is one of our partners. And I said, hey, we need to do this in Oregon. And I did get a response saying, yes, we're working on that. So unfortunately, since we don't have any national labor laws that apply to farm workers, we have to go state by state. So that's, but I'm excited that maybe we'll make some progress on that front too. Another thing UFW has asked us to do over the years is write letters. You know, we wrote letters to the CEO when it was Ostrom, and now that it's owned by this finance company called Instar, I've written a letter to their CEO, and the Washington State legislators wrote a letter to them just recently as well, basically saying, you need to, Teresa Romero had written the letter to them some time ago, of course, never got an answer. So our message to Instar is, hey, your company is not following your stated values, which are on your website, like people first, and we want you to respect your workers and sit down with the UFW and listen and work out these workplace issues. So, and then of course, as Kim was talking about, this other lawsuit that had been filed back in November by the 6 workers and the UFW. I was in Yakima for the hearing on that, which was June 11. And as she mentioned, the judge told the workers they had to go to arbitration, but said the part about the lawsuit that involved the UFW could go ahead. So I think I heard Kim say the workers are going to appeal that. And so there'll be more on that. So Kim, what's coming up that we can be doing as supporters, some of whom don't live locally, but
Right.
they can write letters or sign petitions. What do you need from us?
So let me just start with that we will be starting an action, and it's going to be some in Seattle, and we're going to do one in either Sunnyside or Prosser in front of, and at the moment we're saying Safeways, and what it'll be is out in front, not at their doors, because they're not going to want us to do that, but it'll be about educating people with flyers about what Windmill is doing and that people should buy union rather than the windmill farms. It's kind of like a boycott, and we're going to be asking, and I keep comparing it to the Salvation Army when you're bell ringing, and how sign up for 2 hours a month. We'll have a big Google sheet. And so once we get that set up, we'll send it out to all of our supporters. And so if anybody lives anywhere near the Seattle or the Sunnyside area, then they could volunteer for 2 hours a month to come and help us to do that. We'll do it one day a week. And we're hoping to do like the regular workers one week and the fired employees another week, and support it kind of like that. But we would take anybody to fill the spaces they would. So if you can't do it on a certain day, you can do it on another day. Yeah, so yeah, and so right now, just so you know, we have a whole session going on of windmill workers filling out the complaints for the discrimination. And I did see in the chat, there was a question about what the Department of Labor is doing. One of the things that law that you mentioned is so incredibly important, because Washington is an at-will state, and you can only file complaints about how you're being treated if it is illegal. And the discrimination groups are very, very specific. We do have evidence of discrimination of language and culture, of documented state of papers, and also of age, and a couple others. But really, there are not a lot of protections against being yelled at or having people give you warnings. And there's really no triggers in the law for what do you do when there's somebody lying about you. So we need to change our laws. And so I really appreciate that you guys are supporting that particular one that's going to allow them to organize, because that's the easiest way to deal with it, is then it goes in the contract. So we're doing that. We also are going to be looking at doing some when the windmill workers are coming out, the ones that currently work on Wednesdays, we're hoping to do like a big picketing, signs, posters, where all the people who support them will just be there on Wednesday evenings. We're hoping to start this in a few weeks, and just when they come out applauding and just going, we're here, and it'll be signs that say we support them, and union yes, and si se puede, etc. So we're looking at doing some real public things, but we also would love the opportunity to get our people out there talking about it. If there are any, if they're like like, NPR or OPB that would be interested, or any groups that would be interested in doing a documentary or something on this particular situation, or bringing on some of our people and really kind of investigating what's happening, because the windmill workers are like the absolute best example of what's happening with the H-2A, the discrimination, the way that our immigrants coming into the United States are being treated, the discrimination of language, and all of those things. It really is kind of a perfect storm dichotomy of life, and there's that little microcosm. And so those are the things we really just want to get our people like Sandra out there telling the stories about what's happening, so we can change the laws, which will then change the world.
Great, yeah. So, does anyone have any thoughts on how to support the workers, or any ideas of how to maybe get them out in front of people? I don't know. I can't speak for National Farm.
Well, I think one of the things that I would want to invite our board members, because they're each representatives of networks. Some don't have a network that extends all the way across the country, but to explore the possibility that they have people in their networks that could be local enough to be supportive, like on the ground, and would invite them to connect also with Farm Worker Ministry Northwest, because they're following this and keeping up with this. I'd love for you to think about the possibility that if there's a way to call or do some social media, some comments to the company, that we could put that out nationally to try to get that kind of wider pressure from consumers, potentially. If you think that would be helpful. Those are ways that our group has been supportive of call-in days to a specific company, if that's possible.
I'm just telling her the ideas that you're saying.
Okay, yeah.
Those are things that would be very helpful, actually. Anything that comes from outside of this group that shows that there is a public thing. And this is, I believe, a Canadian company. And so we're not sure that they really have figured out how the United States works in terms of boycotts and things like that. So we're not sure what impact we're having yet on that, but it would be great, because the more pressure, the better.
Yeah.
All right. Are there any other questions or any comments that anyone would like to make? If not, I'd like to introduce Dr. Charles Kyle and Frank McNeil, and they're from the Midwest Labor Interfaith Group, here in Chicago, I believe. And they've been doing some work supporting this mushroom.
My name's Charlie Kyle. I go back to the 1970s with Cesar Chavez and Dolores Huerta. And they asked me to put together a support group that would be in solidarity with the mushroom workers. Primeramente quiero saludar a señora Sandra o señorita Sandra y los trabajadores en los hongos. Ustedes son personas muy valientes. I wanted to say you're all very valiant up in the mushroom workers, but I'm not going to take time of yours. We've got 40 people in our group, and we're sworn to help the mushroom workers. And the way we're doing it is we're trying to create havoc for Allstate, which says that they're the good hands people, but they're treating their third-party partner, which is investing in Instar, and we don't think that's a good thing to do. And but more important than that is we got some great insights talking to the mushroom workers. And the one in our group that really capsulized everything is my great friend, Frank McNeil, who's in the Illinois Hall of Fame for Civil Rights and for African American accomplishments because he beat the Klan in the state capitol, and he was the first elected county commissioner in the capital of Illinois. And the day of his election, there was a newspaper with a front page picture of Abraham Lincoln crying for the way that Frank was treated. So I'd like him to tell his thoughts about how this is like Jim Crow, if that's okay.
I don't know. Can you guys hear me? Am I still muted?
Go on, Frank. I know you're driving somewhere, and I'm glad you're here.
No, I'm in my driveway, but I just want to know, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
We can hear you
okay.
really well. Thank you.
Thank you, Charlie. Thanks for the opportunity to speak. And again, oppression can be on anyone at any time, and collectively we have to work together. I believe that our best opportunity is to use social media, which is something that the company cannot control. And I think that we all need to send as many letters or tweets, Instagrams, YouTube videos to any company, anyone you know in that area that will post it and go against this company. I think that we can build through social media because it is not controlled by the larger companies. And so that's the only way we're going to get this story out, because it is clear that the company has a process of using the workers against one another. And so it has to get to a larger audience that sees the real problem that the state of Washington, while it's an at-will state, there are still rules and regulations. And I think that if we can get social media, I do a podcast myself, and in about another week, I'm going to get with my friend Charlie, and we may do a podcast on my a story on my podcast. And it's local, but local starts the fire. We have to build fires all over this country, wherever we are, to let people know. The more people we can get engaged, the better it is for everyone. So I'm willing to use my podcast and send as much information as I can to people that I know in California and around the country to try to say, hey, send something out to California. If you know someone who's doing podcasts out in Washington or in that California area where farm workers are being mistreated, send it to me so that I can start sending information out to them and start asking them to join us. Because I think the more we have as a collective group, the better off we're going to be.
Great idea, Frank. Thank you all.
Whatever I can do, Charlie, let me know so I can get you on my podcast and we can talk about this, because
we're going to do it for sure.
I don't think it's very well understood what's going on. And this is sunlight is the best antiseptic.
I'd like to make another comment real quickly, that I think it's wonderful that the workers have appealed this agreement to be part of whatever they call it, consultation or arbitration, because it's got a no disclosure agreement in it, and basically it puts this horrible things that they're doing in the dark. And having signed that, they couldn't even tell what's going on. And I'm so glad that they have changed and are in the midst of appealing that. If nothing else, it's saying we want light. You know, 1960, Edward R. Murrow said in Harvest of Shame that we have here rented slaves. He was speaking of farm workers in Florida. And I interviewed mushroom workers in Illinois for my doctorate in 1984. And the mushroom workers said, if we were horses, they'd whip us to death. And it sounds like that's what they're doing today in Sunnyside. So we're on fire here in our Midwest. We've got 40 people that have been around, like Frank. And Frank came up with a great idea, a new one. So thank you for the opportunity of letting both of us speak. And I'm looking forward to being on Frank's podcast. He was very well-known announcer, had his own show for 20 years in Springfield, Illinois. So that's great. Thank you, and great work, Connie, Reverend Connie, and Sandra y todos los trabajadores en los hongos. Que viva, que viva, que viva.
Sí
Thank
se
you.
puede. I
Sí
wanted
se
to say
puede.
that I just presented to them this morning the idea of us making a YouTube video where we would just interview each of the people and let them just tell their stories, translated into English so it'd have subtitles, and create YouTube videos that could just be sent out telling the stories of what's happening here. So we're starting to work on that idea of social media. So any ideas you can send us would be great.
Right. I'd like to be in touch by email, Dr. Kim, because my PhD is in education, and I'm a troublemaker too. And we can tie it into Frank's show and raise some hell.
I'd be glad to post it on my show.
Oh, there you are.
Frank, there's a question about exactly, can you say a little bit more about the letter that you created and that you've used your group to send to Allstate?
I just, we had a meeting, Charles, Dr. Cowell put together a meeting of a couple of state senators, state reps, and other people who were involved. And we all wrote letters on behalf of the Sunnyside to Allstate, asking Allstate to look into the mistreatment of the workers at the plant up in Washington. And so I just put together a short letter saying that, it was something that I think that they should look into, being that they were a investor in that company. And so it was just a matter of to make them aware that someone was looking at what their investment was, and maybe they could say something to the parent company as a response to say, hey, there are people out here looking at what you're doing, and maybe you should, readjust or look at your process and procedures to try to make some changes.
Maybe you could translate a little bit of that, Kim. Could you translate a little bit of that to Sandra?
I've been translating everything as you guys
Oh,
are
wonderful. Oh, I see. Your microphone's off. Okay, great. Great.
So
And I
Thank you.
wonder if we might be able to get a sample letter. Someone is asking for a sample letter for the Allstate letter.
Now, what we, not just that, but what we want, if anybody in the National Farm Worker Ministry can help us, and Julie's great, great leader you have. But everybody says we can get ideas from the Interfaith Center on Corporate Responsibility. I call every other week and leave a message, and we can't, they don't exist as far as our group. But why? Because we need to find out who has stock, who is investing in Allstate, because we can pressure Allstate. These people are hiding in Canada, but all states in our area. And we can go to neighborhood offices and say, you people are doing what Apple did in China. They're working with people that are hurting workers. And we're not in good hands with all states. If you do that, you've got to call these people up. And that's what happened at Apple. And they stopped doing business in China. And we want Allstate. If somebody has Allstate driver's insurance, if they're stockholders, everybody's secret about where they hold stocks, all the nuns, all the dioceses, all these people, but we only need a few to make them wake up. Because they claim the good hands policy means that we only work with people that treat their laborers right. And I consider owning a few $1 million of stock in Instar cooperating with evil and slavery and whipping these people like you'd whip a horse. I think it's disgusting. And we're going to visit all state offices and stuff, but first we have to, they don't even have a corporate address, all state. But we got Frank's podcast. Right?
Yes. You're welcome.
Have you heard from Allstate yet?
We got one of our members who's a labor writer from Bloomington, Illinois, who wrote one of our letters to Allstate, and he got a letter right before their stockholder meeting saying that, oh, we're going to look into this, stop pushing, we're really on it. And then the minute they held the stockholder meeting, they didn't do anything. We're pretty sure that the only reason that his letter made a difference is because he has a labor column and he lives across the street from State Farm, which is Allstate's biggest rival. And they don't want people to leave good hands to go to good neighbors. And but they didn't do anything. It was baloney. So we need, at least we know that it got into their corporate offices, but we want to really pressure them because it's easy to give up $5 million of stock when you're $1 billion company. And what Caesar, why are we doing this? Why are we doing it this way? Because Caesar said in 1973, when they had the terrible fighting for our lives in the fields, Caesar said, we're going to win this because we have a double whammy. We have our courageous people up here in the fields, which Sandra and Kim and Reverend Connie, what all of you people are doing up there in Seattle. He says, but we've got a double whammy. We're turning lights on in the cities and we're going after you from the cities. And so we just wanted to begin creating this kind of pressure. And we're up to 40 people, including Valdemar Velasquez, the head of Farm Worker Labor Organizing Committee, the head of Illinois State AFL-CIO. I'm not into names, but just the fact that, we have people like Frank that beat the Klan. If he beat the Klan, you can beat Instar and mushroom workers, but they try to hide. Thank you.
Well,
sorry for talking so long.
Let Julie know. Some of our folks have Allstate stock, and so let Julie know if you would like any of us that are stockholders to send something, or if you want a proxy. That's we have access.
I'll send that information directly to you, Connie, huh? Reverend Connie?
Well, I think to Julie.
to Julie. Okay,
Yeah.
good.
Thank you.
She's got a bit much wider audience to work with.
Good.
Yeah.
You know,
So-
it's funny because a few years ago we got UFW got us proxies to go to the Starbucks annual meeting when the dairy workers in Washington State were having a lawsuit coming up, and yeah, that was interesting. Of course, you know, basically after you sit through 2 hours of a company telling you how wonderful they are, and then you actually ask them to stand by the workers in their supply chain, it's like, oh well, really our problem, right?
Well, we want to put light and we want to help. That's all.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. I think Elizabeth's got her hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry,
Yeah, that's fine.
Elizabeth.
Yes, I wanted to speak to everybody about, you know, some of the dynamics that I see happening here. I think that it's important that that Kimberly, you know, helping the mushroom workers helps elevate their stories. That we all elevate their stories, because what's happening to the mushroom workers is not just happening to the mushroom workers. This is something that we're seeing is happening all over the United States with H2A workers, with permanent workers that are having to deal with being or feeling pressured or outsourced, and H2A workers coming in to replace them. It's trending. I don't know why. I think we need, you know, more information on this. More awareness needs to be brought to this. And it just reminds me of, you know, earlier a conversation that we had about, you know, the farm labor stabilization program that is going to be pilot. And this pilot program is going to incentivize growers to basically, you know, show that they can treat their workers better. And their reward is going to be, you know, grants that'll help them bring in more H2A workers. And so the fact that the mushroom company is using a staffing agency to bring in H2A workers, I don't know, all of these dynamics that are happening, I think that it just, you know, something that we do need to observe. It's trending, and for some reason, you know, there's a lot more at stake. We're very grateful to all the farm workers that are out there every day in hazardous conditions, feeding America. But we also need to listen to them. We need to listen to the ones that are here locally, to their struggles, because you know, we're always saying America first, you know, and these workers deserve better treatment. Also, H2A workers, as much as we appreciate the work that they're doing, they're only allowed to come in seasonally, and these farms, a lot of them need year-round help. So you know, it doesn't address, the H2A program is not perfect, and it doesn't address all of the major needs a grower has. So I think that it is important that we have more of these conversations. I would like to know, or I would like to hear from Sandra specifically, if there's anything that she's heard throughout our conversation that might offer her hope, or that she might think would work out as a great strategy, or any follow-ups that she would like for us to have with their efforts right now on the ground.
Okay, I just told her the question you just asked, but I do want to just mention about the H2A. I don't know how many of you are aware that there are people that are trying to extend it to year round. But one of the things that we hear quite a bit up here is, up here, we do not need H2A because we have a lot of unemployed immigrants and people here already, and it really is taking jobs. This is not a place that is looking for workers. And so for them to do that here, it's exclusively to have cheaper labor and hands washed of the problem. So really, it's that's a national problem, and that there are groups that are trying to make it full year, and just, it really is about replacing. And when they're complaining about that we're losing jobs to the immigrants, well, now their immigrants are losing the jobs to the H2A. So anyway, so Sandra,
Yo con esa conversación
with this conversation,
quisiera que sí nos ayudaran,
I would like that you do help us,
porque incluso
because
toda
including
está la gente que está dentro está
all the people that are
arriesgándose,
inside,
está arriesgándose
they're risking themselves.
porque como les decía anteriormente,
As I told you before,
hay una persona que acosa,
there is a person that is harassing,
acosa, pero ya acoso sexual.
but there's also sexual harassment.
Que dos personas la acusaron
And 2 people accused her
y no pasó nada.
and nothing happened.
Entonces ahí sí se los agradecería que esta conversación
She would love it if this conversation
que sí se hiciera
would be done,
algo viral para ayudar,
something visual, something that can be seen,
para que los que vengan ya no sean violentados
so that the people that come would not have violence against them,
y pues que tengamos el trabajo, porque
and that we would have a job.
venimos a trabajar
We came to work.
y pienso que estaba por lo menos haciendo mi trabajo
I was
bien
doing my work
de
well
4 años.
for 4 years.
Nomás llegó esa señora
And this lady
y
arrives,
porque ella le dio la gana,
and because she felt like it,
nos está sacando
she's
y
getting
yo
rid of us
pienso que
all.
no es justo.
And I don't think it's fair.
Gracias.
Thank you. Pero hay algo que te dio esperanza o ánimo?
Mucha.
So I asked her if
mucha.
there's anything that gave her hope or happiness, and she
Me-
says much.
Me siento como
I feel
que
like
alguien me está escuchando.
Somebody's listening to me.
Les agradezco mucho
I thank you a lot,
porque ahorita
because now
me siento como liberada,
I feel freed,
porque yo siento que ustedes sí nos van a ayudar.
because I feel like you are going to help us.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much.
Well, please know that you are in our hearts, in our prayers, and we will continue to support all the workers.
A ti y a todos los trabajadores.
Muchos thank you.
Muchos thank yous. She says me, muchos thank yous.
Muchos thank yous. Okay.
Thank you all very much for having us. We appreciate it very much.
Yeah, well, thank you. It's hard to hear, but we need to know, and we need to shine a light on this for sure. Are there any, Julie, is there any closing words? I'm not sure.
Sure.
What's next?
I think that, and understand, I was a union president for teachers, right? And so there's a big difference in having a union with teachers and you know, salaried people and who are educated and who know how to advocate for themselves very well. But even we as teachers had some pretty bad treatment, et cetera, even in school districts where you would think that these educated people would know how to do this. But I will tell you that just in the few weeks that I've been going, we just did a contract, because we have 3 contracts that I manage up in the Pacific Northwest. One is Beef Northwest, one is 3 Mile Farms, and one is Chateau San Michel, the winery. They have the best contract of our 3 contracts. But I went yesterday for the first time to one of the Beef Northwest ones. We were voting for ratification. I'm there to get the vote so that we can get this contract done. And I arrived at the office, and the secretary told me that the gentleman would meet me at the place. And so I went to the place, and he comes in there, he's like, you were supposed to come at the door. You aren't supposed to be walking around. I mean, just yelling at me. And I'm like, what the heck? And I was like, now I understand why these employees are saying to me, these people yell at me. They yell at me. There's a lot of yelling, and I see very little good practices of business. What they don't understand, what the companies don't understand, and I think this is something that you guys could help with, is when your employees are happy and they aren't worried about their livelihood. If you look at the work of Daniel Pink, who did the work on motivation, when you take money off the table so people can live, they are happy and they enjoy themselves, they produce more. There's absolutely intrinsic motivation. And when you are consistently, you know, like she was saying, yelling at somebody and telling them to hurry up and making them go, and why are you doing this? You are actually destroying their will to do things, and it actually decreases your productivity in your company. So the companies suffer when they mistreat their employees. And if we could really start to have maybe a national conversation about how do we explain to business owners that you actually can make more money if you're nicer. Just saying. So I think there's many big conversations that could be had. So, but yes, we really do appreciate it. And I'll just say my heart breaks. I'm traveling. I did in my first month, I clocked 2,694 miles of IRS reimbursed miles just traveling around to meet these people. And I've heard so many stories in all of them. And it's just hard. It's really hard. So thank you so much.
Yeah. No, so let me just say, Kim, you and Sandra, thanks so much for coming to share with us. Connie, thanks for moderating and sharing about Farmworker Ministry Northwest. Frank, thank you for being here and for what you're trying to do in the Midwest. Charlie's left us, but we're grateful for getting in touch with him. We're connected to all of these things. And for you to know, Kim, we're advocating, we're in opposition of year-round regulations for H2A. It's been one of our core pieces since we started. So we're with you on that. And what we'll do is take all these things that you've talked about and think about the ways in which we could help. I was going to tell Charlie that we'll get a connection to the interfaith, the interfaith committee for corporate responsibility. We have enough people that have been connected to that, or even some people on our board who are on that. So we'll get them to answer the phone so that we can work on that. And we'll disseminate some of this information that we've talked about back and forth. So that we can try to help you. We'll look for ways. So really appreciate you taking your time tonight. We appreciate all the folks that have been just here to hear. And I can't say enough about the statement Sandra made. Somebody's listening to me is going to be one of those really important motivating statements for us going forward.
She wanted to say that to you just now.
Thank you.